Hello and welcome to this workshop on how to write realistic characters. I'm really excited that you could join us, whether you're here live or catching up on the replay. So without further ado, let's get started. Why does it even matter that we're writing realistic characters? Because readers remember characters, not plot. And even more scarily, it can take up to 8 books for readers to remember your name. Doesn't always take 8 books, but that's kind of the average. And because of that, readers are loyal to the characters in your stories, not the writers. They might read one of your series, but not another, particularly if you're newer to writing or you switch genres. And now I say switch genres, not target audience. That's really what people care about, not the age range that you're going for here. And if you've got realistic characters, it also forges a deeper emotional connection with your reader. But more importantly, it makes it more fun and easier for you to write. Because if you're really getting inside that character's head, it's going to be a lot more fun to torture them. And we will torture them. It's the fun part. So what one thing do you need to understand? What one thing do you need to understand to write realistic characters? Does anyone have an inkling of what it might be? Give me a shout in the comments if you think you know what it is. It's one thing, one word. Really simple, but also really complicated. Depth, that's an interesting suggestion. This kind of does tie to that, yeah. Their background, a name. Yeah, well, actually, no, half my characters don't start with names. I'm really lazy with naming characters. A lot of mine start life called X or with placeholder names that end up sticking because I'm too lazy to name my characters. I hate naming characters, actually. So quite often for me, their name does come last. But no, actually what you need is an understanding of psychology. Because if you understand psychology, you know what makes people tick. And the more you know what makes people tick and how X incident leads to Y consequences, the more depth you can give your characters. Dialogue. This is my favorite one. As I've already mentioned, when I write my first drafts, they are predominantly dialogue because that's how I hear my characters. The dialogue is really important to me to get across. And I can kind of see the description in my head, but I'm so busy trying to get the dialogue right that the description I always add in later, but it's worth knowing. So this is something that it takes a bit to get your head around, but great dialogue on the page looks like what we think real speech is. But what it actually is a much more polished version of real speech. It omits things like fillers and pauses. If you wrote down how many times someone goes or in real speech into a book, you would lose a reader really, really quickly. And it's horrific to read. It's a really great character trait if you've got someone who's particularly nervous, but otherwise it is distracting from what you're trying to say. Cassie says she loves dialogue. You can tell so much about a person by how they speak. Exactly. Dialogue can show a range of things. It can show social status. It can show academic qualifications. It can show culture. It can show personal opinions, and it can even show someone's confidence levels. You really shouldn't underestimate it. And your book will be much more fun to read if your characters each have individual voices. And now, on to some local dialect. I know some of you will be familiar with this phrase, some of you may not. A up me duck. My nan used to say that to me a lot. This is a phrase that's common in the East Midlands in the UK. Outside of the East Midlands, most people probably won't know what you're smoking. And A up me duck is very regional. It's colloquial, it's informal, it's just a way of saying hi. That's literally all it is. It's very friendly, and it's mainly used by older generations, kind of my parents, grandparents sort of generation. Duck is a really common form of endearment in the East Midlands in the UK as well. But if you go to other parts of the UK, they might say something like mate or love or dear instead. You know, this is really an example of the UK being very divided in the language that it uses, even though it's a very small country. And this is another example. Perk yourself up, gal. This has got a very clear accent. You've got the spelling of yourself instead of yourself. You've got gal instead of girl. It's very sympathetic, and there's also a sense of familiarity between it. You wouldn't really call someone gal if you've never met them before. You might if you're in Scotland, maybe, but that's about it. Okay, so in this activity, I want you to write a conversation between your main character and their opponent. Don't include any description. This should be purely dialogue. How can you show what they're doing without saying it, and how do they feel in each other's company? Okay, so you can tag the dialogue if you want, so you don't lose track of where they are, but it should purely be like Neely Kate said, Rose said, and that's it. Don't think about anything else. All of the action, everything that drives this scene should come from the dialogue.